Let's move into video games, gentlemen. And Garrett, you have been exploring the Forbidden West, as have I.
Yeah, it's so sad that their lunch is going to get eaten by Elden Ring
Yeah.
again. It's very funny because I've played 2, 3, 4 hours of Elden Ring. Not similar to Horizon last week. Not enough to have like concrete
Yeah.
thoughts on. But my one thought is that for the last 5 years, as Dave shows me his copy of Elden Ring, for the last 5 years we've been asking the question like, how does Breath of the Wild change open world games? And the answer has mostly been it
Yeah.
didn't. Like a lot of open world games, like Ubisoft haven't changed anything. Like most of the open world games are still more or less the same. Elden Ring is the first game I'm playing that I'm like, oh, this is the first like post Breath of the
Yeah.
Wild game that's like taking Breath of the Wild and building on those ideas. And the poor thing is again released a week after
It
Horizon.
seems very much like most developers, Gorilla included, were kind of like, they got a look at Breath of the Wild when it came out and was like, oh, fuck that. That seems hard. Let's just keep it what we were doing.
We are going to add the glider and nothing else. Listen, I have very conflicted feelings about Horizon because I don't think anything about Horizon. Actually, no, maybe I don't like the climbing. I think the climbing kind of sucks. But for the most part, I think Horizon Forbidden West is a well made open world game that I don't think you should have to sit there and scrutinize every single time you're playing a video game thinking, is the thing I'm doing right now
Yeah.
fun? But I think if you did that playing this game, the answer more often than not would be no. And not in a way that the thing you're doing is unpleasant, but more in a way that the thing you're doing just feels, pardon the pun based on the subject matter of the game, it just feels mechanical.
Yeah.
It just feels like an open world game where it's like, these are my open world activities, and this is my open world quest, and this is my open
Do you know
world
what's
movement.
funny? In my few hours playing with it, I actually thought of Jack a lot because I thought that this might scratch his Far Cry itch because that's what it is for me. Like it's kind of a very good one of those where it's like if that's the kind of game that's your jam that you want to like stick on a podcast, stick on some music and have a big stomp around this cool looking open world with some gnarly robot dinosaur designs, and you want to like fill your boots with side quests and crafting and filling out skill trees and stuff like that. This will be a game you will sink a lot of hours into. Do I think necessarily that equates to a home run game of the year candidate for me? Probably not. I think it does enough things very well without necessarily being revelatory that like I'm not gonna be voting for this for best story. It might get into best looking because it looks absolutely gorgeous.
It does have some weird visual hiccups now and again, though,
Yeah.
doesn't it? Like, there's some things where, like, it's particularly during like cutscenes, it'll change the angle of the cutscene and some of the textures or the lighting won't
Yeah.
have loaded. And it's a split second thing, but it's weirdly consistent. There's also a scene in the cutscene where somebody was walking away and their footsteps trailed them by like 2 seconds. So it's just like the dirt would move up. It's like,
And it's funny
weird.
that feels like an engine thing because I feel like there were similar kinds of things happening with Zero Dawn on PS4. It's an interesting one that like
And to talk about Elden Ring as well, Elden Ring is rife with those problems.
Yeah.
Like, there'll just be whole grass textures that won't load for like 2 seconds. You'll just see the dirt. And then it's like, oh, that's a weird art. Oh, no, the grass just hasn't
was
loaded.
actually-
What are you
reading-
playing it on, Garrett? Out of interest, Elden Ring?
Both on PS5.
Yeah, I
Ah, right,
read
okay.
that the most stable versions of Elden Ring are the performance boosted on Series S and X, but after that, if you're getting it on PlayStation, people recommend you play the PS4 version.
Weird.
Yeah, which
That's
is like
odd.
that's unusual.
Very odd.
But back briefly on Horizon, I think it is. What you're saying definitely mirrors my experience so far, Garrett. Like, I can't necessarily go, here are the glaring things wrong with this game. It is good, but is it something that, like, once I beat it is going to live long in the memory? Not necessarily. And this feels like a thing that Guerrilla have been doing, because this is kind of like the Killzone thing. It's like the Killzone sequels were just more Killzone, and pretty much this is just, if you like that first game, here's a load more of that first game. You know? It doesn't feel Like, I'm not saying it necessarily needs to reinvent the wheel, but it just feels like, oh yeah, this immediately is recognizable as this is Horizon Zero Dawn just 5 years later, you know?
Yeah, it all feels so like obligatory. Like all of it, just the way the game plays, all the story stuff. Though I'm about I think 10 or 11 hours into it, and there is some story stuff popping up then that's like more interesting, because I actually didn't play the first Horizon, so I just like googled Horizon plot synopsis and watched a video on it beforehand just to get myself caught up. And there is some plot stuff happening after 11 hours, which is quite a long way into the game for the game to get interesting. But there is some stuff there in the story that I'm like, I might want to see this through after I'm done with Elden Ring. But it is very much the case that playing this game, I just don't have any strong feelings about it. Like, neither good nor bad.
And you know, the first one was one of those where there was... Do you ever get that, Garrett, in open world games where it's like, whoa, there's one particular or two particular types of side quests or types of mission that these are really cool. I'd love more of these. And there's hardly any of them. And then there's ones that you find relatively tedious, and there's a million of those. Like, that was me in the first game, where I was like, the cauldrons were fucking awesome. Like, going into these weird kind of like technologically advanced things, trying to figure out from like environmental clues and audio logs and stuff like that, like what is the mystery behind this game and shit like that. And there being good combat challenges in there. And then there's only a handful of those dotted throughout the map in the first one, and then the rest of the side quests are, you know, kind of very Far Cry-esque in it. Oh, you want to upgrade your satchel? You need to find this, and this. And yeah, like after a certain extent, once I upgrade things to the extent I want, I lose all patience for that kind of shit. So I can see myself doing some explore, because it's a nice looking world, but then, you know, at a certain point, I'm probably just going to critical path this thing. I don't think this is going to be a game I'm looking for excuses to overstay my welcome in by any stretch.
I did have an interesting thought playing the start of this game, which is a pretty linear tutorial. It's basically like a contained level as opposed to an open world thing. And I was thinking, like, would this game be better if it wasn't open world? If it was taking these combat mechanics and these like exploration mechanics and just building 10, 12 levels around them, one of which is a cauldron, some of which are combat based, some of which are take down this cool giant enemy. Yeah. And it gets rid of the filler, it gets rid of the fluff, it gets rid of like, there's a tower there, go climb it. It gets rid of, there's a camp there, go clear it out. It gets rid of, there's a cave there, go explore it, there's an item in the end. If you clear out all that filler and just take like the core of what that game is and contain it into like a character action game, I think it would be a better game.
Like, maybe that's the thing that gives us kind of a tone of slight disappointment with the game, is because there is, kind of like you're saying there are enough things you can pick out of it to make an unbelievable, like, do you know, the designs of some of these robot dinosaurs and the idea of, like, you know, tagging them to flag like the weak spots and things like that, and some of that shit is just like, I love that. Do you know what I mean? I think it looks really cool. It feels great using your arrows or your different weapons to knock bits and pieces off them to make them weaker or to harvest and things like that. I really love. And yeah, maybe it's tough to put that genie back in the bottle though, isn't it? Like, after the first one being open world, like, I think they probably run the risk of making more people annoyed by, severely contracting, you know, the scale of the game in that way, even if it does make for materially better game for people like us.
Yeah, like after the first one was open world, you can't go back. But maybe if they started with this being a Tomb Raider-esque game instead of, like, because when you ask yourself the question, like, why is this open world? The answer is, well, because that's just the kind of game these games are. There's no, like, we're bringing this to the open world that really makes it really interesting. As opposed to, like, games like Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring, which try to at least take the open world formula and change. I shouldn't say Elden Ring. I played 3 hours of it. I don't know. Maybe I'll hate it. But, you know, that are trying to do something new and different in open worlds, as opposed to, like, we all give out about the Ubisoft map checklist. And it's just what this game is. And it's a good version of it, but I think we have reached the critical mass point of that kind of game, that
I suppose, yeah, like you said, it's exposed even more by the timing of both of these games in the series coming out.
Poor Gorilla. Poor Gorilla. Every time they were, and at least this time they were like, thank God, Breath of the Wild, no release date, we're safe. And then Elden Ring. Elden Ring even should have been out before the Horizon, but they're like, no, we'll delay it to a little bit after, just to again eat
And
their
also,
lunch.
if I'm Gorilla, I'm not thinking for a second that a Soulsborne type game is going to be the one to eat my lunch. I wouldn't be worried about it even if they were releasing the same day. And then, like, you get closer to the date and you realize what Elden Ring is, and it's like, oh no, they're in trouble again.
They've released their well-made same old open world game days before the revolutionary changing of the open world genre for a second time in a row.
Yeah. Extremely funny. Extremely funny.
But I will say, if you like the first one, you'll like this.
Yeah.
It's maybe if you might get tired of it, but like if you're like, oh, I'm hankering for more of that Horizon, you'll like this. I have small problems with it. Like if you have 4 traps, you can only place 3 of them because you didn't get the skill tree upgrade. And I'm like, that just makes no sense. If I have 4 traps, why does 1 break if I put down 3? It's video gaming in a way I don't like at times, but you know, it's good for what
I think for me this is going to be one of those games that I don't think will be conducive to long play sessions of like 4 or 5 hours. It's like I'm gonna pop in, do a bunch of stuff for like an hour or an hour and a half, and that's the way I'll digest this game. Because like you were saying, that like there's so much open worldiness to it that it's going to get repetitive real quick if I'm just kind of marathoning it. So I think,
and I'm not completely against open world games because like both Spider-Mans are the same. Like both Spider-Mans are checklist games, but the act of moving around that world is so much fun that, you know what, I don't care if I go around and collect 50 backpacks. It's fun to do it. So like you can do this kind of game in a way that's interesting in a modern environment. You just have to find what your twist on it is.
Exactly.
Or you have so many fast travel points that it doesn't choke to explore the environment if you don't want to as well. That's the other thing, I think. If you don't have that fluidity of movement or interesting like mechanic for traveling, I just think you got a fucking butt ton of fast travel points, right? So you can get from A to B and enjoy the content of the game rather than arsing around with travel.